This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Friday, September 6, 2019. It's IFA, and I'm not there, but live from IFA is Michael Josh in Berlin. How are you, Michael Josh?
Hello from Berlin. I'm very good. Ich bin gut, as they say in German.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sehr gut. So I presume things are a little hectic because I'm catching you kind of at the end of the press part and the beginning of the conference part, correct?
Exactly. So IFA actually starts today, but I'm already exhausted because, as you know, the press part is usually where all the action takes place. The last few days have been full of briefings and launch events that we've had to attend. So the biggest news items have already happened, have already been announced. And now we spend time at the actual show floor to see what everybody else has on offer.
Yeah, any little things you might have missed, because honestly, we get pre-briefs on almost all the good stuff. So thanks for being on the show. I know it was a bit of a crazy marathon for you this week, and I'm really appreciate that you were able to squeeze me in, because I literally just got back from my gig at Burning Man yesterday, and I wanted to jump in and get my audience some news. The last two shows were pre-recorded. I think they were pretty interested. We did a camera special and a electric car special with Steve Litchfield of the UK for the camera part, and with Roberto Baldwin of Engadget for the car part. But this is all going to be about IFA, the Note 10 too, because the reviews have come out while I was away. You have one. I'm still waiting for a device. Samsung's being a little tricky with review units in the US, as you know. But hey, let's start with that maybe. What did you think of that phone?
It's still a device that I have on me. I was actually surprised about how much I really love the phone. I've been a Note fan for a while. The Note 2 was actually my first Android smartphone. The appeal of having a stylus is actually something that really...
Do you actually use the S Pen then?
I do. I'm an S Pen user. I like to use pens. I'm a visual thinker. So even if I am... I need to type something out, I like being able to write it down. It helps me process those thoughts. And so even on my iPad, I love the iPad Pro with the pen the same way. And so I use it to scribble notes and thoughts and ideas. So I am an S Pen user. I know some folks will say it's a gimmick. Some folks will say, most users won't use it. But at least I think the Note is actually a device made for someone just like me.
Well, that's awesome, because for me, I've never really been a big user of the S Pen. I mean, I appreciate some of the functionality, but to me, I wouldn't buy a Note 10 for the S Pen. I would buy a Note 10 for, whatever else it brings to the table. So obviously, there's been a lot of coverage around this phone. The thing that struck me at the event in New York City, of all the phones that I get my hands on, is, as you know, we both get everything, was the incredible screen-to-body ratio. It somehow seems like the most modern looking phone in recent years. I think it's a pivotal change in Samsung's design, and I think I love the looks of it, and I love the vibe they're going there.
I agree completely. It's a very beautiful phone. The display is great. Samsung has that nailed down. They make the best displays on phones, and the way it all comes together on the Note is awesome. Although, I would say a lot of users might say, oh, it's not as exciting as I wanted it to be, because we all know that the Galaxy Fold, foldable phones are on the horizon. But having said that, the Galaxy Fold, which is again, they announced actually at IFA, is coming back, and it's making it's ready for launch. That's a first generation product. And the Note 10 has been through 8 iterations already. So having said that, it is a solid device. All the kinks have been ironed out. And if you're looking for, if you're willing to spend over $1,000 for a phone and you want the best out there, this is definitely one of those you should consider.
So the big question, I think, is if you take aside the S Pen, and we've talked about the Note 10 on the show prior to my going to the desert with one of my guests. I think it was Our friend Michael Fisher, in fact, we
think
did it
so.
right after in New York, right after the event. So we know the specs, we know the features, we know there are two models. If you take aside some of the, it's a little gimmicky what that S Pen can do. Have you used any of that functionality, that new Bluetooth gesture-based stuff? Like, I think of it as the Wii. The Wii wand controller when it first came out?
It reminds me of an actual magic wand. Those for me are gimmicky. I do like the feature that they put in last year where you can use it as a selfie button, a shutter
camera trigger,
camera
yeah.
trigger, yeah. So, when you're traveling alone, you can have it further away, you can use it. But the gestures, not so much.
Yeah, so other than the S Pen and the fact that this design is a bit of a break and a change in Samsung's industrial, I think it feels very fresh. I kind of like squarish phones myself. Not as square as Sony, but definitely more square than that kind of weird oval-ish shape that was prevalent during the S2 and S3 and, do you remember the S4 days where things were kind of like pebblish? I'm really glad we're kind of more like a little square. Even OnePlus has gotten a little squarish, and the P30 Pro has that flat top and bottom. So I'm excited about the design. Of course, there's the crazy colors in the back. They finally had to catch up with the Chinese manufacturers there, didn't they? Because they've been rocking some insanely beautiful backs for a while now.
If there is white or black and blue if you buy them off Samsung.com and Best Buy. But for those who can't decide, you can get the Aura Glow, which is almost like a mirror-like finish. It basically refracts light, so it explodes into a whole bunch of rainbow colors.
It's insane. I mean, you never know what color you're going to get next. It's just like a party every time you pull out your phone.
Exactly.
Yeah, so other than all that, of course, the specs are out of this world. There are a couple of interesting things. Of course, no headphone jack, which we can discuss, which I think is kind of really not worth discussing, but at the same time, maybe is worth discussing. And then there is the cameras have been, at least one of them, I think it's the telephoto sensor has been improved, correct?
Right, the telephoto. So the aperture on the telephoto is bigger, so that when you're using the zoom lens at night, it will bring in more light. So it's more
usable. Have you noticed the difference?
I have. I actually spent an extra 2 days. I was 2 days late in publishing my review because I really wanted to answer these questions myself. And I had to go back and I went out with Chai and we went on a quote unquote date. We found a fancy place that had mood lighting and, it's just so that we could see what it was like to take pictures of food at night and things that you would normally use your phone at night for. And so I did see an improvement in overall versus even the S10 Plus.
Interesting. Well, it's to be expected when you look at the specs.
The camera is insane. It's very, very good.
Samsung's always nailed the cameras in the last few years. I think since the S6, we had some pretty decent cameras on all the Notes and the flagships, and I wouldn't expect anything else. But at the same time, it's nice to hear from somebody who knows what they're doing, because I still don't have a device. But other than that, like, does anything stand out for you that maybe you can't get on the S series?
Well, not really. But you did point out that there are two sizes this year, and I think that's an important point to make. The Note has always been about, Samsung kind of invented the word, we don't use it that much anymore, the word phablet, which was phone and tablet. While today it's commonplace to see huge phones, Samsung kind of made it hip. So much so that Apple kind of poked fun at them at one point, right? Like, who wants to buy a big phone?
Yeah, and look at them now.
Look at them now.
The 10s Max is so big.
The Note, the original Note was that original big phone. And now, so for Samsung to come out with a smaller version of the Note is almost a different direction. There are some things that it doesn't have. The display is not as high as a resolution.
I was surprised about that, weren't you? That the guy, if you look at the S10 line, other than the S10e, every phone is Quad HD. But then here's a phone that costs almost a bit less than $1,000, a small Note, and it's only 1080p. And personally, I don't mind. I think 1080p at that size is fine. But
agreed.
Wow, right?
Well, I don't mind as well. In fact, I will say, and I love all my tech journalist friends, me included, but don't listen to us. You're going to be fine. In fact, the Note 10 Plus and the S10 Plus, while they might have Quad HD displays, we by default, if you actually
They're at
look
1080p.
it's actually a 1080p, and most users, I think, will be fine. So if you want I know a lot of friends who have wanted the Note over the years, but never really pulled the trigger because it was just too big of a phone for them. If you're looking for the Note, now's your chance because there is a smaller version available, I guess,
and has the S Pen, which
and
is
has
the thing,
S Pen.
right?
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, if you think that these things that it might not have versus the Note 10 Plus, I don't think most users will mind.
No, I don't think so either. No, I agree. I think it's going to be a no-brainer, no big deal. And I think it's interesting that they made a smaller version because, I mean, honestly, they're getting pretty big. For some people, that's really too big, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, so for me, the big thing about the Note is the aesthetics, of course, everything but the kitchen sink except the headphone jack, the better camera, and the fact there's two sizes. I think I'm looking forward to getting my hands on one. I think the question I have to you who's used all the phones now is, would you spend extra on a Note 10 versus S10 or S10, whatever S10 version, considering they're now a little cheaper to buy?
So I did say in my at the end of my review, if you look at official pricing, the price difference isn't that big. I think $100. But if you look at reduced pricing, then of course you spend as much as you're willing to spend.
Right.
A lot of my friends will find it hard to recommend the Note versus the S10 because it's so close. But there are things I like about the Note. So if you're willing to spend that much money, otherwise there are options out there. The OnePlus 7 Pro is still a great option, yeah. $700. The Pixel 3a is also a great option. But yeah. What you have to remember when we're talking about the Note line, we're talking about the phone that has the best specs of the year and the best experience on a smartphone that year. That's what the Notes have always been about. And at least where that's concerned, it delivers. Now you just have to be willing to pay for it.
Yeah, it's basically the power user's phone.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, it's also now become the creator's phone in some ways too, right?
That's definitely.
And I think that's really exciting too.
Agreed.
I mean, there are other options, but the S Pen makes a big difference there. If you like to draw, whatever it might be, paint, you got a tool now to do it with, and that's always been one of the edges on the Note. And so, speaking of like a headphone jack, I think what I just want to say about that, I still don't like that, but I feel like we've finally gotten to a point now with Samsung joining that weird party of no headphone jack, where flagship phones no longer have headphone jacks. Like, if you look at all the lineups, so Apple started it. Well, technically, Moto started with the Z series just before Apple, and Apple did. And actually, technically, Le Eco started it with the Le Pro 2, but when they were still a company in China. Back in the day, just before the Moto Z series. So Le Eco, Le Pro 2, then the Z series, then the iPhone. Then we got, who was next? I think it was actually OnePlus and then Samsung, because LG stuck with it. I'm not talking about Oppo, Vivo group, because other than the OnePlus, because there's so many phones there. But oh wait, no, Huawei
the
somewhere in
Pixel
there.
2 and Huawei.
Oh, Pixel, yeah, Google, and of course Huawei with what was the first Huawei?
I think
Mate 20.
I think it was the Mate 22. Yeah, agreed.
Mate 20 Pro, only that one.
Pro, yeah.
Actually, wait, no, Mate 10 Pro before that.
It seems like a lifetime
Mate 10
ago.
Pro did not have a headphone jack. Anyway, the point is that everybody's joined the party, and if you look at flagship, ultra flagships, like the best of the cream, the crop. None of them have headphone jacks if you don't count the S10. It's because the Note 10 supersedes it.
It's really becoming a trend. There was even a pro level laptop announced here at IFA that also doesn't have a headphone jack. Yeah.
Sacrilege, scandalous.
As a user who uses AirPods, it doesn't really matter to me. as
Yeah.
much. But there are times when you do just want to be able to plug in. But there are options and there are ways
Yeah.
around it.
Yeah.
You just have to have adapters and connectors and dongles and
Yeah, I
whatnot. Yeah.
mean, for me, I use Bluetooth wireless for when I fly with my Sony headphones, the Mark III over the head,
Mm-hmm.
which are amazing for noise cancellation and sound quality. So I use
Mm-hmm.
that for flying and for my travels, my commutes when I'm on the train in New York, whatever, going to and from an event. Then I have a pair of OnePlus Bullets USB-C that
Mm-hmm.
I use as if I have a device that I need either to plug a microphone or earphones into that doesn't have a headphone jack and is USB-C. It works on anything. It works on on a MacBook. It works on an iPad Pro. It works on a phone that has USB-C, a tablet with USB-C. It works on anything. And I have that in my bag. And then, of course, if I really want to get serious about audio and I have a phone that I want to use that doesn't have a headphone jack, then I have this a dongle by Hidiz. It's a
Mm-hmm.
small company out of China that makes some of the best sounding dongle. It's absolute audiophile grade. It's as good as the quad DAC in the LG,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about 35, $40. It's a little more pricey than your $9 or $10 or $15 dongles, but it makes all the difference. And I use that with wired headphones if I
Yeah.
really need.
What
Yeah.
people need to know is that connectors aren't built the same. These adapters, these dongles,
Oh
especially where
no.
USB-C is concerned, for things like the microphone to work and whatnot. So like I went out and bought the Apple dongle, very reliable. So I use the USB-C to headphone jack adapter so that I can use wireless microphones and whatnot
Yep.
with my Note
Yep.
10. So yeah, there are ways around it. I
And
mean,
and the Apple
creators,
one sounds
yeah,
good. I mean, it's a pretty
agreed.
good baseline. So is the Pixel one.
Hmm.
If you want, unless you want to go all out and buy that $30, $40 whatever high dis dongle, which
Mm,
by the way you can flash with different firmware for different levels of sound quality,
wow.
depending on whether you want microphone functionality or not. So I've got mine fully highest quality with no microphone functionality because I just want it for audiophile purposes.
Mm-hmm.
But there are others. The Razer phone dongle is one of the best.
Mm-hmm.
Right below that in quality is the Essential phone dongle if you can get your hands on it. And right below that, I would put the Apple and Pixel, various different versions of the Pixel dongle in the same boat. And then, and the Huawei one. And then below that, like the worst one that I've ever heard, honestly, from a brand company was the HTC one. So avoid that one. It doesn't sound very good. But this was in the early days. HTC was one of the first to drop the headphone jack and go USB-C digital all the way with, I don't know, one of those crazy blue finish phones that they had. Do you remember that? It was
Mm-hmm.
one of the HTC One something something. It was a big phone. Anyway, let's move on to IFA, shall we?
Yeah.
I think there's lots going on there. You've posted some videos, which I'll put in the show notes, of some stuff. I have a
Yes.
list
Well,
here.
yeah.
What
I
does
mean,
really stand out
I
for
can.
you?
Well, using the headphone jack as a transition. LG announced a phone with a headphone jack. Their LG G8X dual
That's
screen
right.
smartphone. It was quite interesting because in fact, you and me, I don't know if you remember this, in Barcelona, we bumped into each other after the LG event, and we were
Hmm.
both looking for that dual screen that they had announced, but we couldn't find it on the show floor for the V50.
Yeah.
So LG reached out to me a month before IFA, uh, asking if I wanted to take a look at the V50 dual screen. And even if it's a phone that's been announced many, many months ago, I really wanted to see what the dual screen was about. But I also wanted context just in case they made a similar announcement here at IFA, because that was what was rumored. So I did take a look at that, and I did post a video. And every time that I do these kind of videos, I'm like, is it a gimmick? Is it not a gimmick? And I force myself to use these features. Remember when we were in Computex and ASUS had that laptop with two screens?
Yeah.
And I see the value in being able to multitask with two screens. Sometimes, being able to have a video call on one window and have a Google document open on the other so you have your notes around, or being able to, the example people use all the time, which is probably silly, is watching a YouTube video while typing an article. But being able to do two things at the same time is interesting. So at I had some in my video. I had some initial complaints about that design, and it was
Yeah.
I was thrilled to be sitting down in my briefing for the G8X. And it's G8X because there was already a LG G8 announced
Yeah,
earlier this
yeah.
year as well.
So is this a case or is it actually literally a phone with two
So
screens?
so that it's a case. So they've fixed some of the kinks with the LG V50 dual screen.
Okay.
It is the G8X is a standalone phone. Depending on which market you are in, it will either come bundled with a case or sold separately. But they're really meant to work together. And so the reason why they're keeping it as two separate pieces is so that you have the option to use it either way. They say that they've sold about 500,000 of the V50 dual screens in Korea, and of those 500,000, about 30% of the users keep the case on the entire time. It's actually not that. I mean, it does make it a little bit chunkier, but then again, I have no moral ascendancy because I use a battery pack on my iPhone, and so it's also quite chunky. I actually enjoy using it, and they've really improved some of the problems. You know, they make it easier to switch between screens. There's a lot of interesting things that you can do with it. One thing is, they have, and then they work with this third-party browser manufacturer in Korea. It's called the Whale browser. So, for example, one really nice practical example is you're shopping on Amazon. And so you search for the item that you want, and then you get like Lego train, and then you have a listing of Lego trains, and then what we normally do even on our computers, we click and it opens in another browser or in that same window, and then okay, we don't like it, we go back so that we can see what else was on the listing. With the Whale browser, you can load the search results on one screen. You can click
Right.
and then it loads the product page on the other screen, and then you can just click through the different results without having to leave that page. That was pretty cool, but it's also for gaming. You can flip it around like you would a Nintendo 3DS, and you could have your game. And then the other screen is a controller, and then there are different kinds of controllers that kind of mimic a physical controller would look like, in the buttons that it would have. And then you could customize controllers as well. And then LG says they're working with game developers so that they can offer more customization options that are built for the various games. That's also an interesting case study. It's almost like LG's answer to the foldable phone. It's yes, so they're like, instead of you might not be able to use it as a tablet, but there are actually benefits of having two screens.
Right. So in terms of just looking at the phone side by side with the original G8, not without the dual functionality, what's different? It looks like it has a teardrop camera instead of a notch in the top of the screen,
Yes,
correct?
it has a teardrop camera. I don't even remember what the notch on
And
the
they
G8
removed
was.
did they remove all the gesture
But they did
gimmicky
remove.
stuff?
I wasn't able to dive in that much to see if the gestures are still there. They probably are, but they didn't talk about it. The biggest
Okay.
physical change, it still looks basically the same, cameras flushed on the back. But there's no more fingerprint sensor on the back. It's built into the display now.
Oh, it's OLED. Yeah, of course. Got it.
Yeah, because
Cool.
with the case you kind of like cover it up anyway too. So
But still only two cameras in the back, a wide angle and a regular. No
three,
telephoto on this. You have to
three.
go to the V50 for that. Oh, there's three.
There's three.
Ah,
Yeah.
the photos don't seem to show three. That's why it's so confusing.
Wait, don't correct me. Don't quote me on that. I'm confused now.
I think the V50 has three, and this looks like it only has two. I could be wrong though. I'm just checking the photos right now.
I need to check my video as well. Go watch my video and find out.
Yeah, I will put your video in the link. When I put the podcast topips together, you hadn't published.
But they did
any.
improve the camera. They did improve the camera. So they've
good.
put in a larger image sensor, so that you take better photos, and they've also improved video stabilization. So
Yeah, it says 12 megapixel standard and 13 megapixel ultra wide. That's what it is. Cool. Well, look, I mean, I like the G8. I reviewed it for Elena for Geekspin, and I felt that even though the gimmicks were stupid and I didn't like those, and the design was a little boring, I felt that I liked the size of the phone, and I really liked I thought the imaging was really good. A lot of people didn't give credit to the G8 for its image quality.
The problem with the
I took
G8
some incredible photos of that phone.
The problem with the G8 really was that it just didn't offer enough to compete with everyone it was trying to compete with. And it also felt like last year's phone in some way.
It was too expensive for what it was. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so the dual screen, both on the V50 and the G8, kind of push these phones and give it something to differentiate itself and makes it interesting to me. To be honest with you, I wouldn't mind using a G8 as my daily driver with that dual screen. I kind of like it.
So it's still a small phone versus the V50, which is large, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'll gloss over it because I'd like to get into other topics, but I'll also will link to a video of the V50 dual screen so people can have a look at that system. The V50 is not a new phone. It came out at MWC. Well, it was announced at MWC. It's finally out in the US on Sprint and somebody else as a 5G phone, I think. So it's expensive. And so, that's about the only news that are really IFA related here. And I guess the dual screen case you played with is a second generation case on the V50.
Yes,
correct?
so the V50's dual screen case is the first gen case, and then
it's the first gen.
And the one that comes with the G8 is in
G8
a way
is second gen.
the second gen. Yeah. The second gen case. There were improvements, for example, on the V50, like when you were getting a call, when your case was closed, you couldn't really see who was calling. So they put like a little tiny display on top so that you could see. They make it more. You can now. It's not like 3 set angles. You can. The hinge is like any angle you want. There are a lot of nice bits of improvements here and there. But the phone I really want to talk about is the Galaxy Fold.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. So let's lump together some of the announcements. We're gonna go to Nokia after LG.
Okay.
So we did LG. Samsung had 2 things. The Fold is finally shipping, not in the US. We'll get to that in a second. And there's an A90 5G. I just want to mention it. I'll link to it. Unless you have something to say about it, it looks like basically a higher mid-range A series with a 5G radio, meaning it's probably the first affordable-ish 5G phone, right, in terms of cost.
Yes.
So that's why I think it was noteworthy. But the Fold, so let's talk. Oh man, what a saga it's been, right?
I know it's almost like how do you call this, failure to launch almost. But you know what? Let's just pretend that the first batch of tech reviewers that did get the Fold were beta testers, finding kinks so that so Samsung has taken. It's been a few months, but they've really worked on that hinge. So here at the show, we were given some time to spend with the new Galaxy Fold, the updated Galaxy Fold. So they've made the hinge better. You can kind of feel more secure. It feels more secure when you kind of like open it and close it up. One of the biggest problems was that quote-unquote screen protector that people thought was a screen protector, but was actually a protective layer. And it was really applied in such a way that it did look like a screen protector on the original unit. Now it's flushed, and the bezels kind of like it's flushed underneath the bezels, so you don't really see.
That makes more sense, right?
Makes more sense.
Why didn't they do that in the first place?
And there's a cap. It's hard to describe, so you're gonna have to also go watch my video. But on the edges, the part that folded, that folds, they have caps on both sides so that dust and debris can't get in, especially when you're folding and unfolding.
Right, absolutely. Where is your video, by the way? I'm looking on your.
It's being uploaded as we speak, so it'll be live by the time this podcast goes live.
Awesome. Well, I'll put it up instead of what I have then. And then so obviously I played with actually, let me think about it. I played with the Mate X, the folding phone from Huawei, but I've never actually touched a Fold from Samsung, the Galaxy Fold, but I can definitely see the difference. I mean, looking at images side by side of the old device and the new device, I don't have to even feel it to notice how much how much work went into improving that.
Yeah, especially for how much it costs. You don't want it to break. They seem very
Right.
confident and they're ready. It's already I think it's already available in Korea.
It's coming out in Europe, right? Soon?
September 18 in Europe,
Right.
and in the official word for countries like the US in a few weeks. So it'll be coming.
Okay. I thought they'd completely abandoned the U.S.
No.
because the carriers pulled out, right? T-Mobile pulled out. AT&T was completely quiet, but we haven't heard a peep from them, so we don't know what they're doing. They were the only two partners.
My
but
guess
I guess
is
they'll
that
sell it unlocked, right?
my guess.
They're going to sell it.
Yes, my guess is that it was just they just had to pull it out of the market.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how much marketing money they wasted on that. That's insane, right? I mean, it was probably they're not happy about it. But hey, let's see what happens. Maybe B&H will sell it. Maybe Best Buy will have it. If they do, since I really doubt I'll get a review in it from Samsung, I might just go buy one and return it because obviously I can't afford spending that kind of money and keep it. Just to let you, my audience, know what I think. So good news on that. And again, more affordable 5G phones are coming with that Galaxy A90. The next
A90,
two phones I want. Yes.
Very quickly, the A90 traffic-wise on my website and on my YouTube comments is there are a lot of people who want to see and hear about that phone. So it's a video I need to do soon as well. So there's a lot of interest, and it's good.
It makes sense. I mean, my
Yeah.
audience has a lot of people from India. So if if this is a 5G device, but once 5G launches in India, they're not going to want to spend $1,000 on a 5G phone.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah. So it'll be interesting. It looks like it's almost as good as a Galaxy S10 in terms of specs, but not quite there. So I don't want to get into too much detail because I'd like to jump to Nokia.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of excited about what HMD is doing every time they do something. So I'm a bit of a fanboy, I have to say. Fangirl, rather. Nokia 2720 is what you did a video about, but also you saw the 7.2,
Yes.
which has a pretty impressive camera for a $350 phone.
Yes.
So let's talk about the 2720 because that's kind of like it's kind of another retro phone, isn't it?
Yes, they call it their Nokia Originals, and it's really about leveraging that retro appeal, the retro
Right.
appeal, and they've done two already. They did the 3310 the first year. That was
Yeah.
kind of it was 2 years ago, I think, and then they did the banana phone last year. And
Yeah.
this one is actually not, I mean, to be honest with you, I wish they brought back an older phone because this is not from their golden
This
years.
is only 10 years old.
Yes, exactly. This is from 2009. But it's still nice to see a flip phone again. This they also said it's also for like weekend warriors or just people who don't want a smartphone but still need to be in on the essentials like WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook. There are apps that will run on this non-Android,
It's running
non-smartphone
KaiOS, right?
OS. Yeah.
Just the same as a banana phone.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are apps like Google Maps and Google Assistant's baked in as well.
Yes.
That's a big
They have
deal.
a Google Assistant button.
You don't want to type on that numpad unless you were very good at it 10 years ago. I was never that good at that. So obviously, interesting device. I think what I like the most about it is like, the headphone jack, the KaiOS, the Google Assistant stuff. What's the camera like? What were the specs on that? Is it any decent?
I don't have the megapixels. It doesn't autofocus, but the image quality is actually not bad.
Yeah, I mean,
For
in the past,
snapshots, yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? Nokia back in the day when they were still Nokia, the Finnish company, they made a few phones, including Symbian phones, that had no autofocus, but had this kind of wide field of view. So basically you had focus from about 20 centimeters to infinity, and they took really nice sharp pictures. There's a way to do that with some computational stuff and some lenses. And they did that way back, we're talking 10 years ago. So that's probably what they're using here. Makes the cameras cheaper and thinner. The only thing that seems a little cheap looking to me, and you pointed out in your video, was the glossy plastic back there, right?
Yeah, I think it's a bad design decision, and I pointed it out to the folks. I think they wanted it to look shiny, but the implementation wasn't the best thing. But then again, how much is this phone again? Not very much money. For
What
this,
is it, 100 euros or less than
I
that?
think some thereabouts. Let me look at my notes.
79, like probably the same as the banana phone, which is close to 100. Yeah, I mean, look, I like folding phones. I think they're cool. It's not what I would use every day, but it's nice to see a new kind of version of something that some people would really love, and at a price point that you just can't go wrong.
Yeah,
And
109 euros.
This is not really a dumb phone insofar it's running a real Linux-based OS, KaiOS, and it's got some apps available. And it's kind of like an interesting alternative to the ever-present Android ecosystem.
And you might have relatives who don't want a smartphone, but you want them on your WhatsApp family group, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the other one, going back to Android and more traditional form factors, the 7.2 is a successor to the very much loved 7.1 from last year,
Agreed.
which I really, really enjoyed. I still have one. And this is cranking up the camera performance. It does have two cameras, a regular camera, a wide-angle camera, and a time-of-flight camera.
Yes.
And they're all Zeiss branded. And I'm not going to get into the specs in terms of like hardware, like processors and stuff. You can read that on the link.
Yeah.
But what got me excited is that they're using the depth sensing camera to simulate bokeh of famous Zeiss lenses.
Yes, there's a feature.
Yeah, that is cool. And the pictures look really good too from what I saw, the samples, at least I think it was The Verge or Engadget, whatever I'm linking to there. Engadget. They took some really nice portraits that do have that kind of old Zeiss lens vibe going to them, you know?
Yes. We took some photos as well. We have a video coming out. Just too many videos to put out at the same time. So
yeah, I hear
I've been kind of
the problem is processing and uploading. Like when I'm at a trade show, I shoot all the video and then it just trickles out day after day.
I like YouTube doesn't want you to be publishing more than one video a day. I've been doing 2, 3. So I was like, slow down one at a time. So some of the videos will have to wait. But this is a very interesting phone, and it's a very important phone for Nokia because I know a lot of, techies like us are looking for the flagship. And they've tried with the Nokia 9, but they want you to know that the Nokia 9 Preview isn't their flagship phone.
No, it's a special phone, right? It's a one-off.
It's a proof of concept, playing with innovation to kind of show people that, hey, these are our experiments in what a phone can do. But their focus really as a company has been to deliver really well in this mid-range segment. And that's what they're doing with the 7.2. They actually also announced the 6.2, which is form factor wise exactly
Similar,
the same,
yeah.
But it doesn't have the Zeiss lens. It doesn't have those.
It doesn't have the camera tricks.
Those camera tricks. But I mean, $349 for the 7.2, and I believe I'm gonna try to find what the price for the 6.2 is.
And I think it's probably a $50
$209
less.
209 euros. So
that's amazing.
That's really good pricing. $349, by the way, is dollars, and I have that because this is the phone that's coming to the US.
The 7.2,
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
So it's going to be a good competitor for the G7 series in the US. And remember Android One, all that good stuff. So yeah, I'm
timely
excited.
updates, great build quality. There's this beautiful green model, which I really, really like. And I'm happy that there is a strong challenger player in the mid-range space in the US, because I think this is the sweet spot for me, price point wise. Yeah. And we need to have options. It's another great phone. I really like it as well.
You're right. Transitioning into another brand, Sony launched another Xperia phone, which is basically a compact version of the Xperia 1 called the Xperia 5. Is my interpretation correct?
Yes. Although I haven't had the time, and because I have so much going on and I don't have a relationship with Sony, I just choose to spend my time on my other content. I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it. I mean, you have an opinion. You've read some stuff. You've heard some stuff. You've talked to the media on site about it, I'm sure.
I've played around with Michael Fisher's what is it called? X1?
Just one, Xperia one.
Xperia 1. Sorry,
I have one as well. Yeah, I have one.
And I like that extra tall form factor. I've always been, I've loved that boxy design, but the camera is just so slow.
It is a little bit.
And for me, if Sony wants, I mean, I've said this over and over so many times. I don't even know, probably on your podcast as well. I mean, considering, I always just feel disappointed because for a company that makes image sensors for the rest of the smartphone industry, for most of the smartphone industry, you kind of get disappointed that they can't put out a really great camera phone.
Yeah, it's good. It's very good, but not outstanding.
Yeah.
And I have the Xperia one. I've played with it quite a bit, and my takeaway is that this is definitely one of the best camera phones from Sony as a phone in recent years. They finally brought OIS to a phone, which, as you know, they resisted doing forever because they didn't want to cannibalize my theory. They didn't want to cannibalize their point and shoots, their RX series. And this is definitely getting there. But then you have the P30 Pro, and then you have the super diminutive but phenomenal Pixel 3a, and then you have, diminutive in specs and price. And you have, of course, the Galaxy Note 10. And then you ask yourself, where are you in this game, Sony? Mm-hmm. And ultimately, yes, I've taken phenomenal photos with Xperia 1, but I could have taken the same photos with a Galaxy S10 or an LG G8. And at that point, I'm like, you have barely kind of caught up, Sony, yet you make these sensors, and what you're saying is so dead on. They really need to understand that, no, your camera business is not going to take away from your phone business. They're not going to take away from your camera business, because your camera business is kicking so much ass right now.
Mm-hmm. And it should be the entry point.
It's not the same league. You can't even compare them. Like, there's a different world still there between a Sony A7 and even a P30 Pro, right? I mean, come on.
Exactly. I mean, agreed. I have the A7 and I will still take it out over the P30 any day.
Of course you will.
And, they should think about it just like the iPod was to the Mac, the halo effect. It's the entry point into, an audience that is new to Sony, similar to the Walkman was, right? And exactly. They love the brand. They enjoy shooting photos with their phone, and that's how they transition to their cameras. It's all about software, and I think Sony really needs to work on their software. The Xperia one, while it takes great photos, I remember how long sometimes some of the shutter.
It's slow.
It's so
and
slow.
The other thing is the other thing is that it doesn't stand out as a phone other than being 21:9. Right. I mean, the display is incredible. It's a 2K display, almost 4K, 3 and something K. But I mean, it's like, so what? Like, we've already established that 1080p is really all you need, right? So I mean, come on.
Well, what you're saying is a predicament of anyone who wants to play in this space, right? You either have to be the best at something or offer something that's special but also practical and useful and that users can get behind, right? I mean, that different aspect ratio is something that's different, but is it practical or useful enough for people to want to buy the phone?
I'm not sure it's worth it. Like, in my time with the Xperia one, I mean, it makes the phone definitely more easy to hold and to type on, but then the keyboard's too small, right? Like, compared to another flagship of that size, it feels like the keyboard's cramped. And while I love holding it in my hand, like width-wise, then I start typing, I get frustrated. So I'm not quite sure what to do with myself, right? I'm like, this is good, but it's bad, and I can't resolve the two, right? And I'm just like, gimmick, And
exactly.
It's sad because I kind of get what they were going for. Let's switch to another one, because obviously we don't have too much to talk about here, and neither of us have played with the Xperia 5. Yes. It's just it seems like a more compact version, and in the past, Sony has made some really delightful compact phones.
I think it's, yes, agreed. If there's anything to be said about this phone, it's about Sony's return to the space. They were the ones who really did these mini phones, space. That compact space. The Z
flagship, like no sacrifice, no spec hidden, just the whole enchilada, but in a small phone. I love that idea.
And that is something that I still am a firm believer of, which is why I like the smaller Note. Apple, by the way, actually does that with the XS, 10s and 10s Max. They have
Correct.
the same features, except for battery life, but they're the same phone.
Right.
And
And
that's
then, you
what
know,
it
there's the
needs to be.
delight.
So that users have choice, right?
Yeah.
Because, and you know, I do like small phones too. And so if I want a small phone, you shouldn't shouldn't restrict me from being able to get the best features that you have to offer.
Right.
And that's what Sony does really well, at least in terms. So yeah.
Yeah. And related to that, in the same league, you'll find the Pixel 3, 3A, the smaller versions, of course, that are pretty hand-friendly. The G8 and G8X we just talked about, they're really hand-friendly. Back in the day, there was the Essential phone that felt phenomenal in hand. We also have, let's see, there's a few more like that that I feel kind of hit the size sweet spot. And so, you know, kudos for Sony to be coming back into that space. Speaking of another brand that is doing some interesting things with cameras, Moto One Zoom was, well, technically, I know the briefing was in the US earlier this month, and already actually in August, but the phone was finally announced at IFA, and this is a Moto One from the Moto Android One series of phones with a really cool, crazy camera system. It's got a regular, with that 48 megapixel IMS. It might actually be the Samsung sensor, not the Sony sensor. I'm not sure, but the reality it has a 3 times optical zoom. It has a ultra wide, and it has a time of flight camera. Correct?
Yes, but I wasn't at the briefing because I was traveling in.
Well,
was I in China or India? I forgot. I was
I wasn't at the briefing either because it was in New York and I was in SF. But they apparently the price point is $450 US for a phone that should have some pretty interesting camera chops. It has OIS on the main camera, OIS on the tele camera, of course, the 3 times zoom. And it's got the depth sensor in addition to that. So 4 cameras in the rear.
I see
it looks interesting.
I see it's the same play as what Nokia is doing with their Nokia 9 PureView.
Correct.
It's being able to, as champions of the mid-range space, they still kind of need to be relevant and show that they are able to innovate. And I think that's exactly what this phone is all about.
And it has a glowing Moto logo in the back.
I mean, who doesn't love a great glowing logo?
Who doesn't? Who doesn't want something out of control like that?
I miss that on my MacBook Pro.
Yeah, it has a built-in It has a fingerprint sensor in the display. I would have thought it would be cool if that logo in the back was also the fingerprint sensor, but it can't have it all. And the last phone for IFA that I want to kind of talk about very briefly is TCL, parent company to Alcatel, surprised everyone with a phone branded with their own brand. Well, it wasn't a surprise for us media because we knew that was coming. But I think for the rest of the world, say hello to the TCL Plex, which is a mid-range phone that, well, is interesting because it has a dedicated low-light camera with 2.9 micron pixels. That's the only thing that got my attention out of the whole thing.
A large image size. Well, I guess you have to talk about TCL. You know, most of the folks will know TCL because of the televisions. And so the display on this is to take some of that learnings from that display technology. And, you know, just for those who don't know, TCL makes their own displays on their televisions.
They do.
So unlike, you know, some manufacturers are using other people's displays, they make their own display. So they're using that technology and putting that on their phones. You know, there's HDR plus, HDR10 plus, so on and so forth. But you're right, that huge 2.9 micron pixel size low light camera. I haven't had the chance to take it out in the real world and take low light photos, so I can't comment on how good it is, but it's nice to see another player in this space. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. The phone looks interesting. I'm not a big fan of the design. It's a little kind of blingy to me, but I dig the idea that there's 3 cameras in the back and it's not what you expect. There's a regular, there's an ultra wide, and then there's that low light optimized one. It's like cool. I mean, for that alone, I'd like to play with it. And that's it in terms of IFA for now. There's still stuff coming from IFA. Let's go quickly through some news items that happened while I was away. We don't have to elaborate.
Well, I can talk about, if you'd like, I can talk a little bit about Huawei and some of their IFA announcements.
So there's news that they're launching a Mate 30 on September 19th. Where is it? In
Munich, Germany.
Munich,
Germany. 18th or 19th. I'm not
19th,
sure
I
about the
think,
dates.
is what I have in my
Here
notes.
at IFA today, actually, they announced their new Kirin 990 processor.
Right.
It will have both the 5G and non-5G variant. So a lot of improvements to both performance and efficiency, a really solid chip. In terms of hardware, they actually released pretty cheeky. Their FreeBuds 3, I believe is what they're called, is basically an Apple AirPods. I wouldn't say ripoff, but they look alike. They look very similar.
Yeah.
It's available in white and black. But again, as an AirPod fan, I am actually excited to try this out because they were talking about some of the technology and it was really interesting in what they can do. It's supposed to have active noise canceling built in. They say, the problem is when you get earbuds like this, you know that the quality isn't going to be great. That's not the case here. So I'm actually excited to try them out. And they also released the new the P30 in 2 new colors. But of course, the question that everybody wants answered is, what will the new Mate 30 be like? Will it run Android? And right now, it seems that that's a big question mark, not just on our minds, but I think there's a lot of internal question marks as well with regards to that particular question.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, this phone looks like it's not going to get Google's blessing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be really sad that we can't run
Mm-hmm.
Google Play Services apps. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, to me, it renders it useless as good as the specs might be. So I'm a little, honestly, quite concerned about that.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And I think everybody is internally too, so much so that it's going to affect what they are able to discuss on stage when they do launch. I think what they hope will happen is that they will be able to get an answer and that license to proceed in time for the launch. Otherwise, there will probably be no handsets for journalists to review or shoot on the day of launch. Instead, they will use the launch to talk about all the new features of the phone. And I hear from my sources that the phone has been about doing what they did for photos, this time for videos.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I mean, it's surprisingly early compared to last year. So, I mean, whatever. We'll see what happens.
A whole month in advance.
I'm looking forward to seeing what they have to show in terms of specs. Obviously, Kirin 990, but at the same time, I'm like, damn, it's like this thing is just not going to be viable for any of us, at least.
Right, and the timing is really bad. I don't know why they pushed it up so early. I mean, they're going to be a week after the iPhone. I don't really know if it's going to be called the 11, but
maybe
next
it's on
iPhone
purpose.
is launched.
Maybe it's going to be the week that the iPhone reviews are out. Maybe they want it buried.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
We'll see. I agree.
But yes, the iPhone launch is happening on the 10th of September. So
right, that's taking place.
Yeah, and then which means it'll go on sale the Friday after, which will be what, the 20th?
Correct. I mean, usually if the reviews are on the 10th, which I believe is a Tuesday, right? Let me think. Is it a Tuesday? I have to look it up.
Me too. It's Tuesday. Yeah.
It's Tuesday. So then the reviews will be the Tuesday after that, the 17th. So that's what you can expect. And what I'm excited about, one of the rumors that happened while I was away, was that there might be a phone called the iPhone Pro, which I'm so excited they would do that. I hate the naming right now. I hate the fact that they're doing versions. And I really feel like Apple, being Apple, it's like the MacBook. It's either MacBook, MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, and that's it. You then put in brackets the year next to it, and you know which generation you're talking about.
Right.
I want them to name the iPhones like that. I want the iPhone to be the iPhone, and then the iPhone Pro to maybe come in 2 sizes, but just be called iPhone Pro, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that would be the XR, 10R, and 10S, 10S Max we have today. So I don't think they'll do that, but I want them to.
I'm excited, as you know.
I know. Other phones that were announced while we were away, none of them super important because a lot of them already were pre-announced. OnePlus 7 Pro 5G, we know that's existed on E in the UK, is now coming to Sprint. So that's a big coup for OnePlus because now they don't just have T-Mobile on board, they have Sprint on board. Now that phone is going to be only through Sprint because the bands are going to be weird and you're not going to buy that phone unlocked and just expect it to work on anything. So just, be aware that if you want to buy an OnePlus 7 Pro for 5 and you're a Sprint customer, you're going to have some serious carrier bloat and limitations in terms of what bands this thing supports versus buying an unlocked non-5G OnePlus 7 Pro, which will then work on all the carriers other than Sprint.
And so, please don't buy a 5G phone unless
and don't buy a 5G phone in general. Right, exactly. But it's exciting to me that OnePlus struck a deal with Sprint, meaning they now have two carriers and that they're the first 5G phone. They're one of the first few 5G phones in the US because of that. That's big news for a company like OnePlus that just barely sparked a new partnership with a US carrier a year ago, less than a year ago.
I'm happy for them that they've been able to make it in the US market because there is a room and a space for them to play in.
Absolutely.
And there's a need for their phones.
Yeah, and speaking of other 5G capable phones that have a variant that is 5G, the ZTE Axon 10 Pro was finally launched in the US officially. And this phone was launched at MWC. I did a hands-on video, check it out on my channel. But now I'll get a review in it, and it's real. It's an unlocked phone. It's in the same realm as the Zenfone 6, as the Nubia. What is it called? The gaming phone, the Red Magic 3. So it's $500-ish and packs a Snapdragon 855 and all the specs, all the kitchen sink. It's kind of like a OnePlus 7 Pro, but slightly cheaper, right?
Right. And
so that's pretty exciting.
I would be remiss to not, we're talking about gaming phones, ASUS. Remember they announced the ROG Phone 2 in China? They have the the global edition is called the ROG Phone 2 Ultimate with a terabyte of storage with UFS 3.0 storage. That was announced here at IFA.
Oh, that was an IFA announcement. I'll change it to my topics to the IFA list then. I thought that was just an announcement that came independent of IFA. But yes, speaking of our gaming phone, ASUS ROG Phone 2 is now official as a global phone. Finally, a few other items. Android 10 is rolling out on the Pixel phones. I got mine last night. I love it so far. Some people having issues with sensors not working properly after the update. None of that for me. Everything is peachy and lovely. It's only been 6 hours. Talk to me again in 12 hours when everything falls apart and I'll be regretting the upgrade. But I'm glad that I've got my 3 buttons back, MJ. I'm old school. I don't want gestures. I want my 3 buttons, and now I can turn them back on. That was my biggest gripe on Android Pie on my Pixel phones, is that I had to use this stupid weird pill thing.
Well, for me, my issue is it's my muscle memory. My muscles don't have time to memorize anything because I just keep on going from phone to phone. Even this is totally off topic, but even just using the Samsung Note 10 with a button on the other side, and then using another phone.
I flip it right away.
Yeah, and then I got used to it, and then I got back on the other phone, and then I was pressing the wrong button. So the same thing with virtual on-screen buttons as well and gestures.
Yeah, I just go for the 3-button layout with back on the left. That's on every phone. That's what I want. That's what I aim for. I know it's old school. I like the gestures on the iPhones, but I cannot do the gestures on the Android. I know some did really good job. OnePlus did, and others, but I just can't. No. Okay, I had too many phones in my life, and I'm too old school Android user. Other quick little bits of news: Oppo Reno 2 was launched in India. So, I'll put a link in there. I don't want to get into much detail. I'm just telling you what's been happening while I was away. And finally, a couple of things that are not smartphone related, but I think are interesting. I don't know if you guys are aware of Panic, the software company that makes really great Mac apps. A while back, a few months ago, they announced that they were making a tiny little handheld gaming console with a black and white screen called the Playdate in collaboration with the people who make those crazy synthesizers out of Scandinavia. teenage engineering. That's what they are. Teenage engineering makes these really tiny little synthesizers in the music world that are super delightful industrial design. So they did the hardware and Panic did the games. And the way this thing works is it's $150. It's black and white screen, really high quality black and white screen. And it's basically, instead of buying games, you buy a subscription and you get a new game a week. And it's a surprise. You don't know what you're going to get. So it's a very interesting little thing. Anyway, there's an article and Gadget got their hands on it. Finally, they're about to launch this thing in a few weeks. And
cool. I use Transmit, which
so
the FTP client. Yeah.
They make great software, and they've been making games lately as well, like for Mac and for iPhone and iPads. But now they're making their first piece of hardware together with Teenage Engineering to deliver these whimsical Nintendo-like games. And they have like some really good people on board. They have the guy who created some of the games for Sony back in the day, helping them. So I think this is going to be interesting. And then the other thing that's not smartphone related is Porsche, the car company, launched their first, officially unveiled their first electric sports car. The Taycan, which can finally compete somewhat with the Teslas. This is the first car to come close to what Tesla is delivering, although Tesla is still beating them at many things. But they are upping the game in some areas like charging speeds and repeatable performance, which is something that Teslas have a problem with. But they still don't have the range, and the price is twice. Like we're talking about still a whole different league. But of course, with that, you're going to get the Porsche experience, which is an incredible interior and all that stuff. But it's exciting to see for the first time we have a traditional car maker that's really getting serious about making an EV, and it's a sports car EV, which is really interesting. So that, just wanted to mention it. That happened a few days ago. Since I do cover cars on the show. Whew,
Lots of news,
we did it, MJ. We did it.
There's so much work ahead. A lot of phones are yet to come.
What is it called? Techtober, right?
It used to be Techtober, but it's only September. So
no, it's the phone apocalypse is what I call it.
Phone apocalypse is now a 2-month thing. It's already begun, and it's going to be a crazy next few weeks. I guess we can't end an IFA show without mentioning that IFA isn't just about phones. There's a lot else going on today.
Didn't Samsung launch a fridge?
What? I missed some of the announcements, but I was at their booth today, and
I'm not sure.
One thing that really sparked my interest is this bespoke, create your own refrigerators. And like, for example, based on your color palette, say you have a pastel colored kitchen, you could go and customize and create a pastel refrigerator with maybe with 3 doors. One is a little pastel blue, one is pastel pink, and then you could also make a matching microwave. It's pretty interesting, the customizations. There's a lot of home appliances, a lot of smart home stuff on the show floor. I've only covered the smart home and like home appliances and kitchen and that kind of stuff today. There's a lot of. I was at Nicole Scott's. She hosted a cooking show, and one of the conduction stoves is smart. So it knows, like, for example, if water is boiling and so it doesn't spill over, it'll automatically reduce the heat. You put in a thermometer into the fish, and you say, okay, you have to get to 50 degrees. So you stick it in, and it'll automatically turn off once the meat is the exact temperature that you need it to be. There's a lot of cool tech going around. I just spent the day just walking around the show floor without my camera and my tripod, and just really talking to people and seeing what a lot of companies have been up to. That we just don't have the bandwidth to kind of.
I mean, that's what IFA is like. It's mostly it started out as an appliance show, and then it turns into a computer.
Yeah, well, IFA is Internationale Funkausstellung, which is audio show.
Right.
So Funk it was all about a radio.
Radio originally in Germany. Yes. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
Interesting. MJ, do you want to tell the world where they can find you on the internet?
Sure. Well, if you're looking for me, I'm at Michael Josh all across social media. Of course, I run a website, GadgetMatch.com, where we help you find the right device to match your needs. And of course, what I'm most proud about
It's a dating site, isn't it?
It is
It's a dating site for your devices.
Gadgets, exactly what it is. And of course, we have a YouTube channel where all the videos that a lot of the products we talked about today, there will be videos by the time this podcast goes out. You can check it out at youtube.com/GadgetMatch.
And I will link to a lot of your videos, of course.
Thank you.
You know where to find me on the internet, folks. I'm at Tankgrl, TNKGRL. I'm sorry my voice is a little hoarse today, but that's what happens when you're breathing dust for 3 weeks. So, Tankgrl at TNKGRL on Twitter and on Instagram. That's like the comic book character Tankgrl without the vowels. You also find me on Facebook and on YouTube. YouTube.com/MiriamJoire, my full name spelled out. If you don't know how to spell my name, go to my Twitter. My name is there. Remove the space and you've got it on YouTube. There's a bunch of videos that go along with this podcast, some visuals to go along with this audio, so check it out. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the videos, tell your friends, subscribe to the podcast, like the show, talk to me on Twitter about the show, comment in the videos, all that good stuff. What I want to say is that the podcast lives on many platforms, but mobiletechpodcast.com is the main URL. That's where you'll find the RSS feed. And also we're on Apple, Google, Pocket Cast, Overcast, let's see, I think on Spotify, of course, if you like that, TuneIn Radio, a bunch of other platforms. And finally, I do want to thank our sponsor, Audible. Audible.com is the platform for audiobooks. If you like to listen to books, because, for example, maybe you're a delivery driver, you can't read the books during your work day. Well, they've got you covered. They've got a whole bunch of selection. They have a whole bunch of great books. Some are read by the authors. And if you want to support the podcast and help us out, you can join Audible if you're not already a member by clicking in the link in the show notes. And that's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. That's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. And if you click through, that will help us. And you get a chance to try it out for 30 days, keep the books that you download and all that good stuff, no matter what you decide at the end. But consider it. It helps us out. And finally, I want to remind everyone that my blog is back on tankgrl.com, TNKGRL.com, in which I link to this podcast. I link to the videos on YouTube. But more importantly, there's a lot of deals on the blog. So check them out. If you're looking to buy a phone that we've discussed today, look for discount links there for great deals. I have a partnership with GearBest so that we get a little cut of something that supports us. I can continue making these podcasts if you support us and you get a good deal at the same time. Finally, I want to point out that there is a donate link on the blog. So if you do want to be generous, please help us, because I can't make this podcast happen without your support. So that's it. We'll be back next week with another show. We'll probably recap IFA. And in the meantime, I want to thank MJ, Michael Josh, for being on the show again. Thanks so much, MJ.
Thank you for having me. And if you're looking for a book to listen to on Audible, I highly recommend Born a Crime. It's stories from a South African childhood by Trevor Noah. That's what I'm currently listening to right now.
Oh, awesome. Trevor Noah is an interesting person.
If you love the show, you should check out his book.
Absolutely. So stay tuned for another show next week, folks. And until then, cheers.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tankgrl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.